So if you don't understand what a paradox is in personal development, you will always be prey to frustration and plateaus in your life. Because paradoxes are everywhere. They're like laws of nature, laws of the universe, and you have to master them. And if you don't learn how to master them, then you will never fucking understand life.
I think we all have people and everyone just tries to
So I got this idea from this video by actually reading a lot of the comments in the comment section. That basically a lot of people were saying, this is a recurring comment, it's like, well, how can you be yourself? How you can talk about authenticity and things like being yourself while also wearing a mask on the internet? Isn't that sort of ironic? Aren't you sort of being disingenuous here, incongruent here? What's going on, right? And that, if you take the mask literally, well, yes, it might look like I'm putting up a facade, right? But it's like people don't understand that there's a paradox there that in place. Like the reason why I wear a mask and I tell you to also be authentic is because I want to play up to that paradox. The paradox is that in life, you want to be yourself. Yes, you want to be authentically yourself, right? But at the same time, there are certain scenarios in certain people where maybe you're not fully yourself. You can't fully be yourself around these people, right? For example, at a job interview, that's the example I like to tell people, right? Stuff like that. You're gonna show certain parts of yourself to certain people, right? And we can even go deeper here and ask, well, who are you really? Are you just one static self and that's authentically you? If you change from that, you're no longer you? Or are you multiple selves? Are you multiple self-images? And all of these parts comprise who you truly are, right? So are you one type of person or are you different selves, right? And to lock yourself down into one particular self, I believe is very self-limiting. And which is why I wear a mask, to sort of unlock different parts of myself that I don't know that exist. So that's the main paradox, I guess, of my channel, right? But there are many other paradoxes in life, right? And we're gonna address them in that video. If you don't address paradoxes in personal development and in your life, you're always going to struggle. Why is that? Because a paradox is basically there are two contradicting things that exist at once. And when that happens, people who cannot reconcile a paradox usually will overly cling to one side of the coin, right? So for example, like you have to be confident, but at the same time, don't be arrogant, right? So it's like, well, you know what? Well, if I'm confident, then I'm a fucking asshole. I don't want to be that, so I'm gonna be a nice person, and I'm just gonna, respect people. Or the other people are like, well, you know what? Fuck being a doormat. I'm just gonna be an asshole. You know what? Because people are mean to me anyway. I'm just gonna be an asshole and fuck it. And they don't understand that you can be arrogant and a bit of an asshole in certain areas, and it's fine. And in other areas, actually, you should be nice, right? And they don't realize that yes, sometimes anger has to come out. There's a fine distinction between anger and just sort of lashing out and being manipulative and toxic, and just being like, just like a confident, upstanding person who draws boundaries when necessary, right? Knows how to set boundaries appropriately, without impeding too much on others, but impeding a bit if necessary, but not more than you have to, right? Can you see all these nuances here, right? And this is why people get stuck in personal development. So before we get into how to deal with these paradoxes, here are some interesting paradoxes, and let me explain them to you so you just get a better grasp of what I'm talking about. So here's one interesting paradox. In order to be selfless and help other people, you first have to be selfish. So selfish, right? Take so much care of yourself, then only when you are truly selfish can you be selfless in a way. Interesting, right? So, a lot of people are like, people who, I don't know, like to attack narcissists for being selfish and only taking care of their needs. Or like, all of these things, like, yes, they are being selfish in a way, but how can they take care of you if they cannot take care of themselves, right? And, people who are only selfless, like, for example, my mother, who's just like the ultimate people pleaser. My mother always wants to help other people, always, want to be of service to others and all that, right? She has that problem where, she's too selfless to the point that she cannot, she's not taking care of herself enough, so she cannot be selfless to the extent that she wants to be, right? She cannot help others to the extent that she wants to, because she's not even happy inside, or she's not even sort of taking care of herself. She's always stressed out. I always see her running around stressed out, and then she try to help others, and then she sort of sometimes lash out at my father, or even lash out at me because I'm not being fast enough, or I'm not like helping her help others and all this weird shit. And because she's not helping herself first, she cannot help others to the same extent, right? So if you're struggling with that, I'd say, be a bit more selfish. Look at yourself and be like, you know what? I got to take care of myself, right? Not just take care of other people. And if you are too selfish, right? If you always, for the longest time maybe, or, recently you all focus on like your own success, your own confidence, your own sense of fame, your own sort of, all of that stuff, right? You're focused on, getting results and all that, your own results in life. And, you sort of put your relationships aside, or you sort of put other people aside, then look at that and be like, I gotta do, I gotta, be careful here and see, how I can maybe be more of service to others. The next paradox is that when you look at your mistakes, right? When you look at your weaknesses and you acknowledge them, you actually become stronger, right? When you admit your weaknesses, when you admit that, you're weak in that area, right? You're weak in, interpersonal relationships. You're weak in, communicating with others. You're weak with working out, or, with your health. You're not very good at it. Then you become stronger, right? There's sort of this weird idea, maybe it's sort of a man thing or manly thing. It's sort of like trying to hide your weaknesses and hide your flaws, and not only like, sort of puff your chest up. This is sort of a very juvenile way of doing things. I see it a lot. I play this game Valorant a lot, and there's a lot of, teenagers here, kids. So, I'm not, of course, they're at a lower stage of development to understand why they would act like that, but they sort of puff their chest up and trying to like prove that, they're good at the game. And then to prove that they're good at the game, they will criticize others, put other people down in their own team and all that. And this is sort of like this toxic behavior, just, to show that they're stronger. What this is actually showing is that they're deeply insecure, that they don't know themselves, and that they're still building their identity, of course, which is why they're kids, right? That's what kids do. They're still building their identity, but it just shows that the paradox. If you try to highlight your strengths and you try to like overcompensate by showing them off, you actually come off as weaker. And when you show your weaknesses, you come off as stronger. So the next paradox for you is, sort of like a meta sort of perspective one. I think it's very interesting, is you have to envision the future, but you also have to be present to the moment, right? You have to envision the future, look at your future, where you want to go, right? What are sort of goals that you want to set, but at the same time be able to live right now in the present, enjoy the present moment, right? And it's sort of this weird reconciliation to make, because I feel like people in the personal development community who are a bit, extreme, some of them are really sort of future focused, kind of like me, right? Where you set lofty goals, you set sort of a benchmarks you want to reach, like certain amount of money you want to make, certain amount of clients you want to have and all that, and you can get lost in that, right? And those people don't learn how to be present. And on the contrary, there's other people who are like, just be present to the moment, always enjoy your life, and they're sort of obsessed with the Eckhart Tolle sort of teachings or spirituality concepts, and they just end up stuck in the present, and they don't know why, like, they're still stuck at their shitty job, and they try to rationalize and self-deceive themselves that this job is okay while it's not. So this weird paradox where, yes, you have to envision the future, but at the same time you have to learn to enjoy. So how do you do that? How do you reconcile this paradox? To reconcile it is pretty simple, in my opinion. Is, you envision the future, you envision what you want, you can even set goals, but after you set these goals, after you envision your future, you let it go. You let it go, right? So you let it go, you let go of the attachment of, becoming financially free. I don't know, which is kind of my situation right now. I try to let go of I want to quit my part-time job right now. Yes, I could quit it right now. Technically, I maybe I'm making enough money with Nameless, but I just don't want to take a chance. So I just sort of let go of the idea of, what, fuck it. If I gotta stay at this job for another 3 years, 5 years, who cares? Probably not gonna happen, but who knows? I might have to stay a bit longer than I expect. I just let that go, right? And just by letting this go, right? Before I used to hang on to that so much, right? Since I let this go and I'm like, fuck it, I might stay there for a long time, who gives a shit? I'm much more calm, much more happier. But at the same time, I don't want to settle for less. At the same time, so you have to reconcile that yourself. The next paradox is the paradox of self-acceptance, okay? Self-acceptance, self-love versus working on your weaknesses versus self-improvement, right? So the problem here is like some people, they go on one extreme where they just want to improve themselves because they fucking hate themselves right now. They don't hate where they're at right now. They're fat, they're ugly, they don't have any women in their lives, they have nothing going on in their life. And then they're like, I'm gonna go on this quest to become better, right? Which is, it's kind of good, but at the same time, if you lack the self-acceptance of it, then it's gonna just ruin you, right? And it's sort of this idea, like it's weird idea in some of people's minds who are into self-development that, fuck it, man, I gotta just take action, improve myself, fuck my past, fuck who I am today, I wanna become better, right? And it's sort of this fueled by negative emotions sort of mindset, which can become something toxic, something bad, right? And on the other hand, there's other people who are just all about self-acceptance, all about self-love, and they just sort of, yes, they're, I guess, happy where they are, but at the same time, their lives are stagnant and they're not fulfilled and they don't know why. And they try to be present to the moment and do all these Eckhart Tolle meditations or like even affirmations to love themselves, but they don't understand why they lack fulfillment. They don't understand why their lives are emptied, why they don't feel this sort of sense of accomplishment, right? Because you need both self-improvement and self-acceptance. And how do you reconcile both? Well, think about it. If you truly love yourself, if you love yourself really much, if you respect yourself, if you really, you took care of yourself like you were supposed to take care of yourself, right? Wouldn't you want to self-improve? If you truly love yourself, wouldn't you want to improve your life in all other ways and all other aspects? Why wouldn't you? That's the real question here. Another paradox that I want to present to you is, you have to focus on the spiritual, but also focus on the material, right? Spirituality versus the material world, basically, right? So some people in personal development, they go all full out spiritual. They all like buy crystals and they work on, awakening their third eye and all their chakras, aligning their chakras, so everything's okay, and doing sort of all this shadow work, which is great, by the way. And I've looked into some of that stuff as well, which is great. But also, sometimes there's a Julian Blanc. He was making a video a long time ago. He's like criticizing self-help coaches, and he's like, they have all these spiritual gurus who like make videos from their basement. They don't even have enough money to make a to buy an actual camera, and they talk about how being present, being happy is the way to go, and their finances are shit, and they don't have their sort of life in order. Maybe they're even in debt, right? I remember I was calling work at a collections collections department at my bank, and I was calling this this lady. She was a meditation teacher, okay, and she was in debt. She was owing debt to the bank, right? And she was making sort of like, she could only pay her credit card like $50 per month. Why? Because she was a meditation teacher and she was paid on donation. She was paid on donation. Yes, that's good, okay, but at the same time, right, have you thought of like actually sort of paying off like your debt and like sort of taking care of the material world? For some of these people, it feels like they don't sort of take it for granted. They take the material world for granted, and they're sort of maybe like, so this is something you also have to take care of, right? And on the other spectrum, on the other side of the spectrum, you have people, the hardcore entrepreneurs who only want to, make the most amount of money possible, achieve results, and they're like, fuck all this woo-woo chakra shit. This is for hippies and all that. and they lose on all this beauty that they could be, exploring, right? So how do you reconcile the paradox? Well, it really depends on your stage of development, and I believe at a certain beginning stage, you gotta sort of start with the entrepreneurial mindset, sort of material world first, and after you take care of that, then you can sort of move on to the spiritual dimension. So you just sort of have to go with the flow here, and with time, you'll be able to reconcile both. The answer really is just do both, right? Do both. Meditate, but also work towards your mission, your goals. The next paradox that I want to present you is that you have to take your life seriously, very seriously, but at the same time, you have to be able to laugh at yourself and not take things seriously at all. Now, this is a bit strange, right? Because when I began on this path of personal development, I took it so seriously, very seriously, because I was feeling miserable. I was shy. I didn't have any sort of, I had no success with the opposite sex. I had a few friends, but they were not not the type of friendships I wanted to have. They were okay friends. They were not the best friends, right? So I had this going on in my life, and it was just it was just hard. It was just something that I had to get serious about, so I got dead serious on it. But the problem is that with every little setback, I'd get so shaken, I'd get so shaken away, and sort of I'd fall down even harder because I took it so seriously, right? But at the same time, you don't want to take your life too much as a joke, like such a joke that that's complete madness, right? So I have an example for you. There's this film. I never watched the film, but I've seen trailer and synopsis of it. But it's called The Idiots by Lars von Trier. Lars von Trier, VON, whatever. You can look it up. It's called The Idiots. And I think it's Lars von Trier, I'm not sure. But it's basically a film about just a bunch of idiots doing stupid shit, okay? They're adults, they're mentally ill, they're stupid shit. Then you don't want to go to that extreme either, where you just become a farce, you become a clown in your life. And if you do that, if you don't take anything seriously at all, yeah, well, I messed up my exam, I'm $2,000 in debt, it's just fucking funny, who gives a shit? Let's buy more shit on Amazon, get more in debt, right? There's sort of a fine line here, right? So you have to not take your life as a joke, right? Because if you really love yourself, you would take your life seriously, but at the same time, don't take it seriously at all, right? Interesting paradox, right? So how do you reconcile that? Well, you work on what you have to do, you work on yourself, but at the same time, when you make mistakes, you learn to laugh at yourself, right? So for example, I take this YouTube channel incredibly seriously, but at the same time, if I fart in my video, or which happened in one of my videos a while back, I'm not gonna make a deal out of it, right? I'm just gonna let it sit there and laugh at it, right? Or if I make a mistake, and let's say if the next sentence I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna screw it up, I'm just gonna be fine with it. Just be fine with it. So that's something that you can also do. So learn how to laugh at yourself, but also set clear goals that you're proud of, that you want to accomplish. So another paradox of just, sort of human nature is that you are perfect with all of your flaws, right? Your flaws is what makes you perfect, right? It's a strange paradox because, our idea of perfection is that without flaws, without any sort of, without any flaws, without any weaknesses, without nothing else, right? You sort of picture that this perfect statue of David or something like you picture perfection like, that perfect model on a magazine. This is perfection. Have this exact jawline, exact sort of hip to waist ratio, exact muscle size and all that, right? You believe this is perfection, right? But true perfection is sort of, if you realize that, what makes people like, for example, vloggers on YouTube, or, people on YouTube, sort of, who, I don't know, give content, or, even just personalities on YouTube, is their imperfections, the fact that they make mistakes, the fact that, yes, even Nameless plays video games, and sometimes even Nameless is lazy, right? That's what makes you like other people, is that they are imperfect. Right? And you realize also, let's say if you've had a girlfriend or boyfriend before, is that what you like about your boyfriend or girlfriend is weird, but it's the fact that they're imperfect. It's weird, huh? It's like the fact that, I don't know, something weird and funny, like for example, my girlfriend, I don't know, sometimes she forgets things, or she bumps into something, and I find it funny because, you know, she's a bit clumsy sometimes. That's what I love about her. That's the same way, like maybe what you love about your own friends, is that the fact that sometimes, you know, some of my friends, he's just lost all the time, and he's not on time, and I find this incredibly amusing, and I love that about him, even though it's not very reliable. You know, it's something that I like, and you know, I wouldn't want it any other way, right? Can you realize that? Can you realize that? Like, just look at flaws. It's certain things, how it makes it more beautiful, right? Like, I don't know, let's say you have this very old guitar, like sitting in your room, right? Maybe it's your father's guitar, and you know, maybe it has a few scratches on it, the neck is a little bent, whatever, which is my father's guitar, right? Acoustic guitar, and it's all fucked up, right? It's an old guitar, and it doesn't even work anymore, and the neck is all bent and weird. This guitar is like 40 years old and all that, and it's because it's so old and so like imperfect that it has its value, because it belongs to my father, and it's gone through all this time, and like, you know, sitting in the humidity of the room for 40 years, and now like the wood is not even like working properly anymore for a guitar. This what makes it beautiful. And I look at this guitar and like, oh, this guitar has history because of all the flaws and all it's been through. It gives value to that thing for its imperfection. So look at that in your life. So how do you reconcile paradoxes? Let me give you 3 tips on how to reconcile them. Number 1, realize that paradoxes are normal. You have to realize that paradoxes are sort of a law of nature, like they're everywhere in life, right? Like, so you see, like, you know, like there's life or death, and there's light and day, there's light and there's darkness, there's sun and there's the night and all that, right? So you have to look at like, you know, contradicting things, complementing each other, that, you know, it's normal, right? For there to be life, there needs to be death, right? So, you know, a lot of people, they look at paradoxes and it's like, oh, there's a paradox here, it's ironic, it's incongruent, you know, it doesn't make any sense. And because of that, they assume that there must be something wrong with that thing, right? So for example, if I wear a mask on the internet and I tell you to be authentic, there must be something wrong with that, right? Well, what I truly believe is that when there's a paradox present, actually, instead of being a proof that this must be false, it's actually a proof that this must be true. There must be some truth to it. Because anything that's really true in reality is paradoxical, in my opinion. Like everything, right? So for example, you know, have you ever heard of these diets where, you know, you go on a, I don't know, vegan diet, a keto diet, whatever diet, and you eat clean, right? And for some reason, you know, people are like, oh, you gotta eat clean, and they just get hard stuck on that, and, you know, they forget to even enjoy themselves. They forget like to eat, like maybe eat a cheat meal once a week or something like that. They don't even do that, and, you know, they lose a bit of weight, but then they relapse, and then they double the weight that they initially lost, but now they gain it instead, right? They gain that weight back, and they even get fatter than before. Now, why is that? It's because they were they were too much on one extreme. They didn't look at the two sides of the coin, right? And you have to understand, you know, the paradox of sort of losing weight is that, yes, you have to eat less, but you also have to eat more once in a while to sort of reset your baseline metabolic rate, whatever metabolism, so that you keep losing weight, right? You want to hustle really hard, you want to achieve your dreams, you also have to take time off, right? And it's just sort of this weird balancing act that you have to make. So number 1, you know, realize that paradoxes are normal. Number 2, see where you fall on the spectrum. Are you more to the right side or the left side? Are you more of sort of the, oh, you gotta be nice to everyone, respect your neighbor and all that? Or are you too much on the side of like, you know, everyone's against me in the world, fuck everyone, destroy everyone, everyone out for themselves, right? Where do you fall in that spectrum? And can you realize that both can be equally valid? And you can hold both of these ideas together and, you know, make sense of them, right? Can you realize that? Which is tip number 3. Work on counterbalancing. Work on counterbalancing, meaning if you're too much on one extreme, go to the other extreme. If you're too nice with people, if you're sort of a people pleaser and you let people walk all over you, then go a bit to the other extreme, experiment, try to be set a bit more boundaries. Yes, you'll be a bit clunky at first, you will be a bit clumsy, and you're gonna do it and it's gonna come off aggressive, it's gonna come off arrogant to some people, but then eventually by going too far to that extreme, you're gonna find the middle ground where, just the right amount of boundary setting, just the right amount of being direct and, being assertive without being an asshole, right? And yes, me too, I also make mistakes. Sometimes, I assert a boundary and I maybe attack the other person, a bit more than I should have. And, it just creates all sorts of problems. But then the next time I do it, then I dial it down a bit, right? I dial it down a bit and I learn these sort of management techniques, with these people. But you have to do that sort of counterbalancing act. So now I've talked to you about paradoxes, I've told you a bunch of paradoxes, I've told you how to overcome them, how to deal with them. What do you do with all this? What's the point of paradoxes, right? Paradoxes, what's the point of it? The point of it is that, when you develop yourself, when you grow yourself, you have a certain view of the world, right? You have a certain worldview, we like to call it, right? That's just your way of seeing the world. And what your worldview is what I like to describe as an infinite jigsaw puzzle. It's an infinite jigsaw puzzle where you have a piece and then you add another piece, another piece, another piece, and you just keep adding pieces, and each paradoxes that you learn is like you're adding pieces, right? And this is infinite. So there's only more you can learn about life, more things you can develop about yourself, more things you can learn. And the point of it is that you want to keep learning. And you want to stay open to possibilities. And the more pieces that you add to your jigsaw puzzle, the more that you'll start understanding the world in a clearer way. And you just want to keep doing that for infinity. And the more pieces that you make, the more that you add, the more complexity you can add, right? And basically, your worldview is like, yes, when you add more and more paradoxes, the point is not to confuse you, the point is just to add different points of view, different paradigms for you to look at the world from, right? So if you're confused and you don't know what to do, you have to understand this. Paradoxes are hard to explain in theory, right? But they make a lot of sense in practice, right? In theory, it's hard to explain why, sometimes, you should not be a manipulator, you should always be nice to people, be direct to people, but at certain times, you have to be a bit of an asshole to people, right? It's hard to explain in theory, but in practice, once you're confronted with the particular situation, it makes total sense, right? In theory, it's hard to explain that you have to be authentically yourself, but sometimes also wear a mask, right? But it makes total sense in practice once you're at a job interview. And then when you pop out of that, you talk to your close friends and you're a completely different person when you talk to your friends. It makes total sense once you experience it in real life. So when in doubt with a certain paradox, maybe understand that maybe you're not ready yet for that particular paradox. Maybe you're at a different point in your life where, fuck the spiritual journey of chakras. I want to just do entrepreneurship, just get a lot of results. Fuck what everyone else thinks. I'm just going to be selfish and do my thing. Maybe you need to do that for a few years, a few months to a few years, and then you'll realize that, this is not making you happy, and then you flip to the other end of the spectrum and you become, maybe more present oriented, maybe more now oriented. You start accepting the present moment for what it is instead of running away from it through achievement seeking, through thrill seeking and all that. So maybe you're not ready yet, which is fine. So just go along the path, and I hope this video at least gave you some sort of idea of what to do when you encounter paradoxes. So at least consider these paradoxes, and when you'll be ready, you face them. If you need help with finding more clarity about these paradoxes and in your life and you have trouble reconciling them, you can book a free consultation call with me, link in the description below. And if you like this video about paradoxes, then you're gonna love this playlist here about the advanced topics of personal development. I'll see you there. Nothing in life is either black or white. Everything comes in gradients. If you continue to define life in black or white, you will always be confused, you will always be lost,